All right, all right, all right. Great day to you all. Great day to you, beautiful people. Welcome to Reading with Jam. I am Jamal Calpin, also known as Jam, and welcome to my YouTube channel, The Beneficial Black Man, or welcome to my Instagram page at Jamal Calpin. And yeah, thank you for joining me as we continue to do Reading with Jam. And what is Reading with Jam? Reading with Jam is me reading as an actor, voice actor, and a person dedicated to personal development and trying to help Black men overcome gray mediocrity because it is pervasive. Hey there, the other MJ. Hey there. Um, it is pervasive, and it's something that needs to be dealt with personally because it damages so much of ourselves and the community around us. But anyways, to overcome that so that we can live for glory and for good and to become our best selves. And so, yeah, with the Reading with Jam, I'm going to be practicing my voice narration, my voice acting while reading nonfiction content and also, trying to share this content that I feel like is going to be helpful for me as well as for you or for anyone that's listening. So, I'm trying to pick books that, people may not normally read, particularly as Black men, books that we may not normally read and that could be challenging and helpful to us. So, we've been reading Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. And I think it has been challenging. I think it has been challenging and also helpful because the whole point of the book is to like survey the emotions and experiences that we experience or that we have in our humanity. And so we need to explore those things. We need to be aware of those things. We need to put language to it so that will help us to be able to communicate better and understand what we're going through. Because if you don't have the words to deal with it, it makes it very, very difficult to actually deal with the things. It makes it very, very difficult to set up boundaries. It makes it very, very difficult to express what you need or to understand what other people need. You need that language because we think with language, we need it. It's important. So we are now on chapter 13. This is part 15 of me reading through this book, but we're on chapter 13. And I think tomorrow will be the last chapter that we read. But let's get into it. Apologies for starting so late. Today has been a full day, but let's get into the reading. I got 30 minutes on the clock. I don't know how long, if it's going to take that long, but we are going to get going. Actually, I think this is a short chapter, but let's read it. So we are reading again Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. And I'm just going to start the clock. Here we go. Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. Chapter 13. Places we go to self-assess. Pride, hubris, humility. Unless you want to be swept away in a sea of inspirational Pinterest quotes, don't Google pride and humility. From Bible verses to the worst 1980s corporate motivational posters, everyone seems to have an opinion about the importance of humility and the dangerous nature of pride. You don't see too many inspirational quotes about hubris, but if you search political news articles from 2016 to 2020, you'll be swallowed whole. But here's the thing. Most of the quotes have it wrong. Let's break it down. Pride is a feeling of pleasure or celebration related to our accomplishments or efforts. Hubris is an inflated sense of one's own innate abilities that is tied more to the need for dominance than to actual accomplishments. Humility is openness to new learning combined with a balanced and accurate assessment of our contributions, including our strengths, imperfections, and opportunities for growth. We really get this wrong. More to come. Pride. Pride is a feeling of pleasure or celebration related to our accomplishments or efforts. Many researchers distinguish hubris from pride by referring to the pride we experience when we've accomplished something as authentic pride. Authentic pride typically has a positive connotation in descriptors that include words like accomplishment, mastery, triumph, confidence, and self worth. It is positively associated with self esteem and negatively associated with shame proneness. Researchers Lisa Williams and Joelle Davies explain that we don't just feel pride about our own accomplishments, there is a family of pride experiences. I can feel proud of myself, proud of you, proud of us. If you take in the research across the board, authentic pride, or feeling good about what we accomplish, is a healthy thing. However, Rhonda Deering from our research team points out there's another common way that we sometimes use the word pride that doesn't quite fit with the research or with my experience. People commonly say things like, pride got in the way. For example, when someone fresh out of college turns down a job that they feel overqualified for. Or we might say, he was too proud to accept help. For example, when a single dad is struggling financially and turns down his parents' offer of a temporary loan. After rumbling on this After rumbling on this use, we agreed that context and story are necessary to figure out what's driving these behaviors. It could be anything: hubris, fear, shame, def- defensiveness. The learning here is to stay curious when we see or experience these behaviors. Don't fit with authentic pick up, sorry. They don't fit with authentic pride, and there's probably more to the story. Hubris. Hubris is an inflated sense of one's own innate abilities that is tied more to the need for dominance than to actual accomplishments. It is negatively correlated with self esteem and positively correlated with narcissism and shame proneness. In simpler terms, the higher the hubris, the lower the self esteem, and the higher the hubris, the higher the narcissism and shame proneness. Sorry, I was highlighting things. Dominance, which is a type of status that is coerced through aggression or intimidation, plays a significant role in hubris. Researchers write hubristic pride may have evolved to motivate behaviors, thoughts, and feelings oriented toward attaining dominance, whereas authentic pride may have evolved to motivate behaviors, thoughts, and feelings oriented toward attaining prestige. I'm not crazy about the word prestige. It sounds arrogant. But it's helpful to know that in the research, prestige status is earned. Prestige based leaders are admired for their skills or knowledge, as distinct from dominant status, which is obtained by force. To those of us observing hubris, it looks and feels terrible. However, to the person experiencing hubris, it feels good. They puff up and feel they puff up and feel blustery and superior. Furthermore, the person experiencing hubris doesn't really care what we think. Researchers found that hubris can increase levels of dominance, and, interestingly, dominance does not require respect or social acceptance. So when you watch someone do something out of sheer hubris and you think to yourself, don't they see how badly this is being received? Remember, it doesn't need to be received well for them to feel good about it. As I mentioned earlier, hubris is positively correlated with narcissism. In Daring Greatly, I write about how everything from Facebook and influencer culture to the increasingly insane behavior of politicians has pushed the term narcissism into the zeitgeist. While it's while it's penetrated social consciousness enough that most people correctly associate it with a pattern of behaviors that include grandiosity, a pervasive need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, almost no one understands how every level of severity in this diagnosis is underpinned by shame. Narcissism is shame based. In fact, I define narcissism as the shame based fear of being ordinary. Read this next paragraph slowly, then reread it. It's mind blowing. I'm not going to reread it, I'm just going to read it once. Research led by Jessica Tracy found that for the narcissist, positive views of the self are too essential to leave to the whim of actual accomplishments, for they are what prevent the individual from succumbing to shame and low self esteem. Instead, narcissists come to experience a globalized hubristic pride, characterized by feelings of arrogance and egotism, which is distinct from the more achievement based and pro social authentic pride. Hmm. Hubris sounds like an almost foolproof way to assert yourself in the world. No accomplishments, no respect, no social acceptance needed. You would, however, have to hone your bullying skills and be open to being seen as an asshole. The price, in addition to the aforementioned downsides, is that folks with trait hubristic pride are more likely to experience chronic anxiety, engage in aggression and hostility, and struggle with intimate partner relationships and general social support. What does hubris actually look like? Researchers say that it mirrors the physical patterns of dominance display. The head has a downward rather than upward tilt, with a widened stance and less smiling, not hard to picture. I'm going to read that part again though. Researchers say that it mirrors the physical patterns of dominance display. The head has a downward rather than upward tilt, with a widened stance and less smiling, not hard to picture. Humility. I'm ending this section with humility to give you something more uplifting. While the origin of the word hubris is Greek and was used to describe a pride and ambition so great that they offend the gods and lead to one's downfall, humility comes from the Latin words humiliat, humilitas, humili, humilitas, meaning groundedness. Humility is quieter but more genuine and ultimately more powerful than hubris. And as with pride, we've got a lot of it wrong. Humility is openness to new learning combined with a balanced and accurate assessment of our contributions, including our strengths, imperfections, and opportunities for growth. I can sum up humility with one sentence that emerged from the research that informed Dare to Lead. I'm here to get it right, not to be right. What humility isn't: downplaying yourself or your accomplishments, which, according to researchers, is modesty, not humility. It's also not low self esteem or meekness or letting people walk all over you. The emotion of humility involves understanding our contributions in context, in relation to both the contributions of others and our own place in the universe. It's different from pride in that when we feel pride, we focus entirely on the positive aspects of a specific accomplishment, which can still be healthy and productive. The term intellectual humility refers specifically to a willingness to consider information that doesn't fit with our current thinking. People who demonstrate intellectual humility don't lack confidence or conviction. They may hold strong views, but they are also open to hearing other points of view. They are curious and willing to adjust their beliefs when faced with new or conflicting information. Humility allows us to admit when we are wrong. We realize that getting it right is more important than needing to prove that we are right. As we leave this section, hopefully we can also leave behind the ideas that hubris is just a benign form of supersized pride, that pride is bad for us, and that humility is weakness. Pride can be good for us. Hubris is dangerous, and humility is key to the grounded confidence in healthy relationships. And that is the end of chapter 13. So that was surprisingly a really short read for this chapter. I like the way that she broke down in the book the difference between pride and hubris. I think that's really, really powerful because, again, like I said before, I think understanding the language that is tied to our experiences here as humans and dealing with emotions and thoughts and all that stuff, it really, really matters. Because I know for some people, and I'll speak for myself as a believer, being raised a Christian and stuff like that, pride has always been looked at as a negative. Always. Pride is considered one of the seven deadly sins. And so the idea of having pride of any shape or form has always been bad. I like the way that they break this down, though, separating pride and hubris. Because, yeah, you should have some level of self confidence. You should have some level of pride, even in a collective sense. Like, you should have pride in your family. If somebody has kids, they have pride in them. You should have pride in your spouse. If pride in your friends, you can have pride in good things. And it doesn't necessarily have to be toxic or bad. But having hubris is a totally different experience. And I think it's good to know the difference. It's good to know the difference so you can directly identify it. Like for me, sadly, I feel like had I've experienced and I've wrestled with more with hubris in my life in various different ways than with pride. And something that she said that I thought was really good, and it kind of relates to a previous chapter that she did, or previous chapter in the book, is kind of that. Let me see if I can find it again. Um, well, it's tied to the narcissism and all that stuff. I can't find it right now. But the idea that really a big part of the hubris or the motivation behind the hubris is shame. Um, and I would even say like ego fragility. And she mentioned that again in a previous chapter. But dealing with and identifying one's own hubris can be really, really hard because that requires you to then see the weaknesses that you may have. It requires you to be vulnerable with yourself or even vulnerable with other people. And that is like one, that's humility. That requires you to be humble. It requires you to become humble. But it also like spits in the face of the hubris that you're probably trying to use to be dominant or even to feel valid in your existence. And that's not a good place to be. And I think when you don't have any pride at all, when you don't have any self-confidence, when you don't have like when you have low, terrible self-esteem, it's real easy for hubris to get in there and to start dictating and guiding your life. And I feel like a lot of men struggle with that. I know I have. I feel like a lot of men struggle with that. But they don't understand that the hubris that they possess is actually dangerous. It is actually not good for them. And maybe it's being blinded by narcissism or narcissistic traits. I don't know. But I think when you start to confuse it, like, well, I have some pride. Like, no, you're being a dick. Like you have hubris. Like you're not being good at all. And you're letting defensiveness come in and you're all of these roadblocks and stuff start to emerge and it's not helping you, it's not helping other people, and it's not good. And so for me, like being able to have that language and be able to identify is like, oh yeah, I've definitely had hubris in my life. And it sucks. And it sucks. And again, I think it requires us to be humble, to be able to admit that like, yeah, I've been, even if it doesn't feel like it, like how did she just define it? Hubris is an inflated sense of one's own innate abilities that is tied more to the need for dominance than to actual accomplishments. And then she said, a little bit later that hubris doesn't even want to have proof. It doesn't even want to have proof that, oh, I am successful or I am this or I am that or whatever. She started mentioning politics and stuff like that. Yeah, many people think about Donald Trump and, you know, he likes to brag on himself about how successful he has been as a businessman and so on and so forth. And there's so many people like pull out the rap sheet of like, yo, you failed all these times. Like you're not good at this. But there's that level of hubris, I guess. And some people would call him a narcissist. I'm not diagnosing anybody, but that sucks to again be in that place. And I think that's scary. That's scary to be in that kind of place. And I know I've had to confront that in my own life that like, yo, you're not as good as you think you are. Um, or this image that you think of yourself or image that you feel like you're presenting is actually really, really jacked up. It's really not good. And again, you could be defensive about it, you can fight against it, or you can just accept it and be like, wow, I really need to change some things. That requires humility. I don't know. Again, I feel like I'm rambling, but I that was today's reading. That was chapter 13. We have one more chapter tomorrow. I think this book so far has been really, really helpful. Even though this is a short chapter, I do think, again, it provides a lot to think about, really questioning, like, am I being prideful, or am I letting hubris exist in my heart and in my actions? And do I need more humility? I really love this quote that she has, and she ended the chapter with it about what humility is. I'm here to get it right, not to be right. I think this is so good. I think this is so good in so many different forms and capacities. Like, I've heard advice when it comes to dealing with conflict in like marriage and relationships and stuff. It's like, do you want to say you're having an argument or whatever? Do you want to win this argument, or do you want to win your person? And this quote feels very similar to me. I'm here to get it right, not to be right. And I think that's hard for a lot of people, especially if you wrestle with hubris. Like, especially if you are convinced that what you believe or what you know or what you can do is the perfect way of doing it. It can be really hard to be like, you know what? I'm really just here to get it right. I just want to know. I don't necessarily need to be right. I just want to get to the place where right is good. Like, I want to be rightly aligned. I want to be righteous. That's how I see it. But that hubris, man, that hubris can get in the way. um, yeah. But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments on Instagram or on YouTube. Thank you all for joining me. Thank you, the other MJ, for showing up and hanging out. I appreciate it. And everybody else who's there on YouTube. If you're interested in the rest of my YouTube stuff, you can check out the Beneficial Black Man. If you want to follow me on Instagram, where I talk about other stuff sometimes. Sometimes I share the music that I'm listening to. I don't know. I need to. Oh yeah, no problem. No problem. Thank you for listening. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm really terrible at social media. I'm trying to get better at it. But if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Jamal Calpin. So thank you all so much for joining me. I will be back tomorrow, probably in the morning. This was actually, I take that back. I might be in the afternoon. I don't know, but I'm going to be here tomorrow. I'm gonna do another reading. I'm going to finish the book tomorrow. But thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a wonderful night. Continue to protect your mental. Find time for an emotional release valve, and keep striving to become beneficial. And I will talk to you all when I talk to you all. Peace. Stay safe.